Greg Daniel, and I'm happy to be here with you today and talk a little bit about our IMEDS program. So just a quick overview of IMEDS. The IMEDS program stands for Innovation Medical Evidence Development and Surveillance, exists within the Reagan-Udall Foundation as a public-private partnership whose goal is to advance the mission of the FDA through the opportunity to build upon the significant methodologic progress that's been made by the Sentinel Initiative as well as the OMOP partnership. If you're not familiar with Sentinel, it's FDA's active safety surveillance system that's comprised of a distributed database of large commercial health payers in the United States who collaborate to run quick queries on medical products to determine if there are any safety signals that exist. So we're talking about post-market claims data, electronic medical records, et cetera, and querying that data to understand to better understand the safety profile of marketed products. So the way IMEDS supports that initiative is through what we have. The vision is through three programs. One is IMEDS Methods, which focuses on tool development and methodologic approaches to doing safety surveillance with post-market data. Number two, IMEDS Evaluation, which is the opportunity to engage the system and do safety surveillance queries beyond what FDA does. And number three is IMEDS Education, which the vision is to train new scientists in doing active post-market safety surveillance with these kinds of data. So what I'm going to focus on in my talk today is the IMEDS Evaluation program, which is one of the active running programs within the IMEDS program, and IMEDS Methods is also actively ongoing. And but I'm going to focus on the evaluation since we recently did a pilot project. That's the new program, and that's the program that I'd really like to provide the update for you all. Our vision for IMEDS Evaluation is to provide a governance structure and to facilitate the logistical approach to bringing users into the system to do safety queries. And so more specifically, we think of this as two approaches. One is the IMEDS distributed database. And as I mentioned before, Sentinel has a distributed database that's inclusive of large commercial payers across the United States. The vision for the IMEDS distributed database is to actually be a mirror image of that, to develop partnerships with the same data partners that are in Sentinel, to use the same common data model, and to use the same query tools that are used in Sentinel. But we're calling it the IMEDS distributed database because we don't want it to imply that we're going into Sentinel and disrupting what Sentinel does. So it is a separate program that is that the activities are separate from Sentinel, but we're using the same partnerships and the same tools. The other part of this is that we have a data coordinating center that is the same data coordinating center within Sentinel, and that's Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. So they're partnering with us in the IMEDS program, and we're also working with the same data partners. So what we've just finished, and I mentioned the pilot project. We did complete a pilot project that was sponsored by Pfizer, and we did that in two phases. Phase one was to actually develop the policies and procedures of the program. We didn't want to sort of go into a room, create this program, and then come out and tell everybody this is the program and this is how you participate. Collaboration and transparency was a big theme for developing this program. So step one was to bring all of the partners around the table, the data partners, FDA, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and potential users of this system to plan out what should the program look like, what are the rules of the road in terms of engaging with the data, running queries, making the results publicly available, et cetera. And so we spent a good part of 5 or 6 months developing those policies and procedures, but at that point it was just in theory. So we wanted to also be able to test those policies and procedures by running real queries against the system, and that's phase two. Knowing that when you can anticipate any of the challenges or any of the issues that might come up, but you really don't know what's going to come up until you actually start doing queries of the system. And just to be clear, the difference here is that under Sentinel, FDA is the organization that decides what queries to run and directs the system to run those queries. Under IMEDS Evaluation, users outside of the FDA would be doing that. And so that does create new concerns and challenges that we wanted to work through in this pilot project. One of the original visions of Sentinel was to develop the system for FDA's uses in active surveillance, but also to eventually have a path for other potential users outside of the FDA to leverage the tools and the build that FDA did under Sentinel. And so this pilot project was designed to build that pathway and test that pathway to see if it would actually work. So for the pilot project, we invited all of the Sentinel data partners, Harvard Pilgrim, FDA, to participate in the pilot project. And our sponsor of the project, which was, as I mentioned, Pfizer, which represents one of the potential users in the pharmaceutical industry. But we also envision that this could be useful to non-FDA, but also non-industry. So societies, advocacy groups, foundations, et cetera, might also have an interest in doing safety queries on real data. So just the outcomes from the pilot project. There were 12 at the time that so Sentinel's bringing on new data partners as well. At the time that we kicked off this pilot project, we invited all of the active Sentinel data partners to participate. All of them participated in phase 1, which was coming around the table and developing the policies and procedures. 3 of the data partners did not participate in the actual, in phase 2, which was the queries, and for reasons, data quality issues with one that didn't pass the most recent Sentinel data quality checks. The other issue was potential for conflict of interest with the pharmaceutical company sponsoring the project, and then the third was with bandwidth issues. But just to be clear, not all safety queries that are run under Sentinel necessarily use all of the data partners either. Some safety queries don't require all of the data partners because they might be more common than others. So it's routine to get a different number of data partners each time a query is run. Lessons learned, we learned quite a bit actually in both phases of the program. Number one is that the collaboration and running of the queries did work. It did fulfill a need that Pfizer had because they actually posed 2 important questions that they had of the system, and we were able to get results. What we learned with data partners is that early engagement, transparency in the governance and process, and the value in data partners participating in this are all critically important. As I mentioned, when you take FDA out of the sort of driver's seat, if you will, in terms of posing the queries and bring another organization to the system, all of the partners really want sort of increased transparency. So Sentinel has been up and running for several years now. It works. It's a very efficient process that's standardized, that the data partners are used to. But with this pilot project, the data partners were a bit more cautious since this is a new way to engage the data. Having a pharmaceutical company part of this process also raised the level of caution. And so sort of eyes wide open and being more transparent is what we learned and what we will continue to do in this program as well. We also learned that the public health importance of the question is important. So the data partners really want to know what question is being posed of the system and why is it being posed. These are safety questions. So what they really wanted to know is why is this a question that you're posing of the system? For example, one of the demonstration projects was the risk of cardiac events following the use of oral contraceptives, comparing 2 different generations of oral contraceptives. And so what's the public health importance? Why do you think that one generation of oral contraceptives might put patients at higher risk of VTE and other kinds of adverse events? So what we learned was that the data partners aren't happy with just run any query, but tell us why that's important, tell us why you think there's a safety concern there. And then another thing that we learned is that, and this is through our partnership with Pfizer, but we've also discussed this with some of the other members of the pharmaceutical industry, that this process and this capability, if efficient, can help companies respond to their regulatory requirements. So once a product is approved on the market, they might have requirements or commitments to continue to do safety surveillance, and this program can be very useful in doing that because it's essentially the same tools, data, and capabilities that the FDA uses when it's doing its own safety surveillance. So just a quick timeline for next steps. In this quarter, by the end of next month, we'll be finalizing the policies and procedures document. So again, with those two phases of the pilot project, phase one was to develop the first stab at the policies and procedures. Phase two was to test it. We actually went back and revised some of our policies and procedures based on the experience in phase two. So that, that revision is happening right now. It will be done by next month. We're also working on a manuscript that that is going to talk about how we went about building the program, what we learned about partnerships and transparencies. I might have skipped this slide, but we also, not sure where that's at, we submitted 2 abstracts to the ICPE conference over in Europe. And those 2 abstracts were focused on the actual demonstration cases, so they're more safety, science-related abstracts about what we learned about the 2 demonstration projects, and then the manuscript is going to be more programmatic, not necessarily about the results of the queries. We're also holding an in-person stakeholder meeting in June that's inclusive of many of the collaborators within IMEDS to get further feedback, strategies for next steps, et cetera. And then we will establish necessary infrastructure and governance, because we're also thinking about what's next for IMEDS evaluation and how to grow the program depending upon volume and capabilities of the system. How to take that to the next level will be the focus of the next couple of months. Here's that slide that I thought I missed. So future plans for the IMEDS program. Again, we're going to make sure that we get out into the public domain the abstracts, the manuscripts, and also what I want to focus on is that all of the results of the queries are intended to go onto the IMEDS website within 30 days of the query being completed. So that is going to be putting results out into the public domain. During the pilot project, Sentinel is very routine and efficient, and they have different levels of queries. So the sort of very rapid queries are called modular program assessments or summary table assessments. Those are the queries that we tested in the pilot project, but there are also more sophisticated, complex, full epidemiologic activities that happen within Sentinel. We did not test that within our pilot project, so testing those higher level analyses through the protocol-based assessments will be another important thing going forward. So prioritizing and coordinating with Sentinel. As we scale this program, we want to make sure that it does not disrupt the daily routine operations of Sentinel. So we will need to identify how to prioritize to make sure that our data partners and our coordinating center is not overly burdened with IMEDS program plus the Sentinel program. So we're going to be thinking through that with FDA and developing approaches to that. And then another important aspect is the business model and sustainability. Again, that's part of next steps and making sure that we have a business model that does make this program sustainable. And then finally, and most importantly, is to continue to engage with our stakeholder groups, certainly our data partners and FDA, but also broader stakeholder participation and engagement with those groups will be an important focus for the next steps of this program. So I'm going to pause there and invite my colleague David Martin from the FDA to give some comments as well, but I'm going to stick by so that we can both do questions and at the end.
All right, thank you, Greg. It's nice to be here and to talk to you a little bit about the value of the IMEDS program to FDA. So I've gone from being an implementer of the Sentinel system, actually directing an epidemiology division before Sentinel even existed, carrying it through to maturity, and now working in stakeholder engagement on the center director's staff. And I think that, a key point for us is that IMEDS is the one place where non-federal interagency stakeholders can really collaborate directly with FDA scientists and Sentinel scientists to really advance the science of observational evidence generation for safety purposes. And really, IMEDS methods and now IMEDS evaluation are considered equally important to the agency. Early on, at the beginning of the Sentinel initiative, Greg mentioned the Observational Medical Outcomes Partnership, which is a public-private partnership, and there was work that was done to examine using different epidemiologic methods against known drug safety problems and to see how they performed. And initial impressions from that work actually sort of left the public and many decision makers with the impression that perhaps observational epidemiology wasn't reliable enough in a big data environment to sort of be ready for prime time, in a sense. And what has happened through the IMEDS methods research agenda is actually that work has been done to look at factors that contributed to some of those early divergent results. And really what we've learned and what we were able to do through IMEDS methods was bring original OMOP investigators together with other academic investigators outside of Sentinel, Sentinel investigators, and FDA investigators, and really dig into some of these issues around variability. And we found that the methods must be fit for purpose, that they are not necessarily unreliable, but they must be fit for purpose. And we've also found that the characteristics of the data must be understood and must be managed and can't be, entirely automated. So going forward, there's some methods work that we think is also important to support evaluation, including a current project to look at the usability and potential transferability of some of these modular programs that Greg was referring to into other data environments, which could benefit IMEDS methods, could also benefit other users outside as they work with other data partners completely outside of the Sentinel system or the IMEDS system. And finally, FDA has felt it's been useful to be able to come together in an environment with all stakeholders, including regulated industry and academic groups, to over the years develop and refine a research agenda that kind of allows everyone in the field to generally agree on sort of the big problems, the big philosophical and scientific problems that need to be tackled. So, we're very excited about the IMEDS Evaluation program, and I'll recapitulate some of what Greg said. From the beginning, the agency has said that the vision was to have the Sentinel system become a national resource. And IMEDS Evaluation is a key piece of fulfilling that vision. Some of you may or may not know that obviously regulated industry has the same duty that FDA has to continuously monitor the safety of products that are on the market. Obviously, we're doing it for all the products, and they're doing it for their approved or licensed products, which are sold by their company. And they obviously are obligated to report to the FDA on a regular basis, which is no less than yearly, about all safety issues from any data sources that might in any way affect the view of the safety of their products. And obviously, they're also reporting to other regulatory agencies around the world, such as the EMA. So there's this sort of constant duty, and just as we are constantly trying to get better at doing our safety monitoring to make it more efficient and have it be, have a very short lag time between essentially observations and action, they're trying to do the same thing. And so we're very excited about the fact that the IMEDS Evaluation Program gives them the same tools that we have and the same data sources so that they can have sort of the same level of capability that we have. And also there's enhanced familiarity when we're talking across the table because we're familiar with those tools, epidemiologic methods, and data sources as well. And finally, I think as Greg alluded to, there will be other stakeholders that would potentially be interested in using IMEDS Evaluation to access this system and perform health services research with a safety focus. And we think that this will obviously augment the quality and quantity of epidemiologic evidence that's out there and can influence treatment decisions. So generally, we really see this as a very positive aspect for Reagan-Udall and something that will help fulfill that vision of a national evidence generation system. So thank you very much. I want to have Greg come back up, and we're happy to take questions.
I would ask the board, unless you have very specific questions of David or Greg, because we're going to revisit this twice in our board meeting to let members of the public go, unless there's something pressing on this. No questions?
No.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
if the board has anything specific of David or Greg, again, we're visiting this twice in our other meetings, so I just want to move it along. Okay, we will thank you.